excited for this restoration. I have here a very old Carpenter's Vise. It is a Morgan Vise made in Chicago. I know it's old, well, obviously because of the way that it looks, but when I purchased it, I got a reasonable deal on this on Facebook Marketplace. The gentleman that owned it, he is at the age now that unfortunately he can't do too much more carpentry work, and so he's selling most of his older antique tools. Was hoping to find a good home for it, and I think hopefully he found the best home. Anyways, apparently his grandfather owned it, I believe, or his father. But it's going to be a perfect addition to my current workbench. Everything is made out of either steel or cast iron. Very robust, very sturdy. I plan on going with my black and green theme. These old wood jaws are falling off. Yeah, let's get started. So I'm going to do most of the disassembly on this workbench right here, because I don't want to ding up and dirty up my carpenter's bench. Not honestly too rusty. I mean, it's mostly patina. First thing I'm going to do is take off this back piece here, and then to fully disassemble it, I'm going to have to do something about these leaned over guide bars so I can get the nut off. Must have done that back in the day to prevent them from loosening up. Probably have to file it down.
Now that I've taken off what's called the drag bar, I can free the front jaw from the mounting bracket.
Let's do something smart, huh? Whew! Look at that sucker.
Whoa, did you see that spark? Figured I would work smart again.
I think this is going to be as far as I'm going to disassemble the handle. These handles right here are all peened over. I just wouldn't have enough material to put it back on and then peen it over. So I'm just going to have to work around this.
Here I'm filing the peen material flat to the nuts.
Okay. Oh, nice.
These things are pretty stubborn. You can see I'm using a pipe wrench below my large face vise. If you use it right, there's really nothing better for gripping a round bar. So the first step in removing the rust and paint will be to scrub everything down with hot water and my go-to degreaser spray. By getting rid of the dirt, the rust and paint remover are allowed to work as effectively as possible. You can see by removing most of the dirt, the pieces look much better. And sometimes when you're restoring something, that's all you really need to do. But this project is getting the full treatment, including paint stripper. I only use paint stripper when I absolutely have to. I hate the stuff. You have to wear protective equipment, including a respirator. It's messy and goopy, and while it does remove paint, you then have to remove the paint stripper, which is a chore in of itself. You can see I also put some of the stripper on the bare metal pieces. Might as well. As a corrosive agent, it can also remove rust. Another problem with paint stripper is that usually you have to do things twice. It doesn't usually remove everything after one treatment. So you have to go through the same process again, or even a third time. If you can use a wire brush while using the stripper, you can usually get all the bits of paint out from the pits and the corners. Finally, that's over with, and I wash off all the stripper before beginning the rust treatment. By far my favorite way of removing rust is using evaporust. That is, if you have enough to submerge what you're working on. And since you can use this stuff multiple times, I have just enough, including from previous projects, to submerge most everything. I left everything in for 24 hours and flipped the mounting bracket halfway through. But look at this, no rust. It's seriously one of my favorite things. I want to make sure the mounting bracket is completely free of rust, so I use a thinner container to cover the entire thing while I start working on the other pieces. First thing I do is sand down and polish up the guide rods and screw. Now I'll pretty much do the same thing with the nuts and drag bar, but this time use some sandpaper glued to a sheet of glass. This large square nut is pretty rough, so I'll start out by cleaning it with some files, then I move on to sandpaper. Here you can see how easy it is to replace a sandpaper. As long as you use a very light spray, then it's easy to remove. Since the top is rounded, I'll use my Orville sander to clean it up before I move on to the wire wheel. And you don't see me use the buffer, but I did, and polished up really nice.
Okay, so I want to give this another try now that it's been soaking in evaporest, and I let it set in WD-40 for quite a bit. So, oh yeah, it's turning finally. Whew, I was afraid that wasn't threaded. I thought maybe it was like pinned in there or something. It is threaded, isn't it? It's got to be threaded, right? I don't think it's threaded. Wait, is it threaded? Okay, it's not threaded. Yeah, it's just pinned in there. It's a tight fit. Well, at least I can clean it out better. Looks like there's a spring in there. Yeah, it's probably gonna go back in the bucket for a little while. There's still quite a bit of rust in the middle there. That spring. Well, at least I got it out. That's not in bad shape. I can put it back.
I struggled with that for way too long. I put the front jaw back in Evaporust just to make sure I eliminate any remaining rust. Not sure if this pin is warped because that's how it was made or because I was jerking it around so much. Either way, it was pretty easy to straighten out. I stuck it in my Makita drill and cleaned it up with a file. Next, I work on the little metal bench dog and go through the same process as the other pieces, but I thought this could stand to look a bit more unique, so I added this deep chamfer on the tip. Because I could not completely disassemble this handle, it was fairly tricky. The screw head was the roughest, and so I started with that again with files and then sanding. Moved on to the handles themselves. They were a lot easier, especially when I figured out I could do this. Wire wheel, polish, and onto the jaws. The jobs were mostly a lot of filing, cleaning up casting marks, smoothing out contact points and such. I really wish I had time to fix my bench vise during this project. Unfortunately, you're going to see it wobble around throughout the video. If it drives you crazy, imagine how I felt. Fixing this vise is going to be a soon-to-be project. I used sandpaper on that sheet of glass to flatten the front vise. I couldn't get rid of all the milling marks, but as Cindy Laufer once said,
It's good enough. It's good enough for me. Yeah.
I want the front of the vise to be as pristine as possible, so I clean up some of the lettering so it stands out better. I move on to the mounting bracket, a lot of the same stuff, but not so much. There's no need to go overboard on what you won't see that much. Mostly added chamfers and made sure the back jaw was nice and flat. Now before I start painting, I want to cut the hole in my apron so I can mount the vise properly. This bench design is really nice for circumstances like this. As you can see, it's really easy to remove one side of the bench top and apron. I make a quick template on paper so I can make the first cut. This random orbital tool really comes in handy for plunge cuts like this. I set the apron in my large face vise and begin shaping the rest of the mounting space. I really want to take away only what is absolutely necessary. Now that's done, time for paint. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you know I like using this rust reformer as a primer for my iron and steel projects. It ensures that there won't be any rust under the surface of the paint, and it works great as a filler primer. Whoops, forgot to add some additional holes to the back jaw so I can easily remove the back wooden jaws. Don't tell my wife I was wearing my nice boots in the garage. Cast iron is a lot easier to drill through than I expected. Back to painting. As always, I use Hunter Green Rust-Oleum enamel paint. Nice. And time to mount the back jaw. I figured I would wait till it was mounted to cold glue it. I put the top and apron back on and move on to finishing other pieces. Every bare metal surface on this project is going to be cold glued. So I remove all the tape, cold glue the front jaw, and all the other hardware. You may not see me do it, but after I cold glue everything, I treat it with ballistol and let that sit for at least 12 hours. Finally, I get to start putting everything together. First, the little spring that keeps the bench dog up, and then of course the pin that is definitely not threaded. Some good singing. I could have used white to highlight the lettering, but I think it would have distracted from all the other colors, or the two colors. And from here, I'm just going to reverse the disassembly. I'm not going to peen these guide rods. I don't think I have the material for it. And if they start coming loose, then I'll just use some good old Wrangler Star Loctite. Now for the screw and screw ahead. Instead of a nail, I'll be using a tension pin. Much better. I went ahead and installed the square nut off camera. Everything's working out great, much smoother. I add the drag bar and cotter pin. And from here, I'm going to work on the wooden jaws. I cut a piece of oak to dimension and resaw 2 pieces on my bandsaw. This is a template of the back jaw that I use to make the right shape and line up the screw holes. Now I mount it, at first temporarily, just to make a perfect fit. That way I can use the back jaw as a template for the front jaw and use my router to create a perfect match. I drill the holes for the screws, install the screws, plane the 2 jaws level to the tabletop. I fix this gap in the jaws with a bit of planing.
Great job.
And now add rubberized cork to the front jaw. All there's left to do is remount it, and it's finished. I like it. I am really loving this vise. Really excited to own this bit of history and give it new life in my shop. There's quite a bit of interesting history with this company. It was first established in 1890 and was a very reputable company that made quality vices of all kinds. In 1970, they were bought out by the Milwaukee Tool Company, which still makes vices in the Morgan name. As far as my vise goes, I was able to find it in a few Morgan catalogs that date from the 1920s to the 1950s. Unfortunately, not sure of the exact manufacturing date of my vise, but as you can see here, the vise was called the Solid Nut Continuous Screw Vise with the adjustable steel handle, and came in at a whopping retail price of $18. As the 210 vise, it has a jaw width of 7 inches. The same vise came in 8 inches and 10 inches as well. The description notes, designed and built to withstand the most severe service. The extra heavy, cold rolled, and solid nut will last a lifetime. I know this particular vise has already lasted about 2 lifetimes, and hopefully it will last another.